My beloved child, come, sit with me. Let the whispers of the world fade and listen to the eternal song of my love, a melody woven into the very fabric of your being. I see you, my child. I see the weariness in your eyes, the burdens you carry, the unseen wounds that ache within. I am here. I am with you always. My peace, a peace that surpasses all earthly understanding, I offer to you now. Let it wash over you like a gentle rain, soothing the parched lands of your soul. You are my cherished creation, formed in my image, loved beyond measure. Before you drew your first breath, I knew you, I called you by name, and I ordained a glorious purpose for your life. This world, with its fleeting pleasures and crushing disappointments, is not your true home. It is but a temporary dwelling, a training ground for the eternal life that awaits. And within this temporary dwelling, you have encountered pain, haven't you, my child? The sharp sting of betrayal, the crushing weight of loss, the echoing emptiness of neglect. I see the scars, both visible and hidden, that mark your journey. I know the tears you've cried, the questions you've whispered in the darkness, the moments you felt utterly alone. But my child, I want you to understand this. Your brokenness is not your destiny. It is not a sign of weakness, but a testament to your strength, your resilience, your capacity to endure. And more than that, it is an invitation to draw closer to me, to allow my love to mend what is broken, to transform your wounds into sources of wisdom, compassion, and unwavering hope. Let us journey together, my child, through the stages of healing, a path that unfolds not always in a straight line, but like a spiral, returning again and again to deeper levels of understanding and restoration. First, my child, comes the awakening of understanding, the realization that the pain you carry has a name, a source, a story. Perhaps you have heard the term complex PTSD, a label that describes the lingering effects of prolonged childhood trauma. It's not a flaw in your character, my beloved, but a natural response to unnatural circumstances. Think of it like this. Imagine a young sapling, meant to grow tall and strong, reaching for the sun. But what if that sapling is constantly battered by storms, deprived of sunlight, denied the nourishment it needs? It will still grow, but it will be twisted, stunted, bearing the marks of its hardship. Your spirit, my child, is like that sapling. You were meant to flourish, to blossom, to reach your full potential. But the storms of your childhood, the abuse, the neglect, the emotional abandonment left their mark. The understanding of CPTSD is not a condemnation, but a recognition that your struggles are not a sign of weakness, but a testament to the battles you have fought, the storms you have weathered. This understanding comes in part through learning, through listening to the stories of others who have walked a similar path, through finding the words to describe your own experience. It also comes through mindfulness, the practice of paying attention to the present moment, to your thoughts, your feelings, your bodily sensations without judgment. Imagine sitting by a river, my child. The water flows continuously, carrying with it leaves, twigs, and debris. Mindfulness is like sitting on the bank, observing the flow of your thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them. You see the pain, the fear, the anger, but you do not become them. You are the observer, the witness, and in that witnessing you find a space, a separation, a beginning of healing. But understanding alone is not enough, my beloved. For within you there dwells a harsh voice, a relentless critic that echoes the negativity you endured in your childhood. This inner critic, as some call it, is like a cruel overseer, constantly finding fault, whispering doubts, magnifying your perceived imperfections. This critic, my child, is not your true voice. It is a distorted echo of the voices that wounded you, a learned pattern of self-attack that has taken root in your mind. It tells you that you are not good enough, that you are unworthy of love, that you are destined to fail. These are lies, my beloved, cruel and damaging lies. To heal, you must learn to challenge this critic, to shrink its power, to silence its venomous whispers. Imagine this critic as a wild, untamed animal, snarling and snapping at you. You cannot simply wish it away, but you can learn to tame it, to train it, to reduce its influence over your life. This takes practice, my child. It requires vigilance, courage, and a commitment to self-compassion. When you hear that critical voice, pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, is this thought true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Often, you will find that the critic's accusations are exaggerated, distorted, or simply untrue. Challenge those thoughts. Replace them with affirmations of your worth, your strength, your resilience. Speak to yourself as you would speak to a beloved friend, with kindness, understanding, and unwavering support. This is not a battle that is won overnight, my beloved. There will be times when the critic seems overwhelming, when its voice drowns out all others. But do not despair. Each time you challenge its lies, each time you choose self-compassion over self-condemnation, you are weakening its hold, reclaiming your inner power. As you begin to tame the inner critic, you may find yourself entering a new realm of healing, the realm of grief. Grief, my child, is not a sign of weakness, but a testament to the depth of your love, the depth of your loss. In your childhood, you were denied so much. You were denied the safety, the security, the unconditional love that every child deserves. You were denied the opportunity to develop a healthy sense of self, to explore your potential, to blossom into the fullness of who you were created to be. And now, my beloved, it is time to mourn those losses. It is time to allow yourself to feel the pain, the sadness, the anger, the heartbreak that you may have suppressed for so long. Grief is not something to be avoided, rushed, or minimized. It is a sacred process, a necessary passage to healing and wholeness. Imagine a wound that has been festering beneath the surface, covered over with layers of denial and avoidance. To heal, that wound must be opened, cleansed, and allowed to breathe. Grief is the process of opening that wound, allowing the pain to surface so that it can be released and transformed. Allow yourself to cry, my child. Allow yourself to rage. Allow yourself to feel the full spectrum of your emotions without judgment, without shame. Find a safe space, a trusted friend, a therapist who can hold space for your grief, who can witness your pain without trying to fix it or take it away. Grief is not linear, my beloved. It comes in waves, ebbing and flowing like the tide. There will be days when you feel overwhelmed by sadness, days when you feel numb, days when you feel a glimmer of hope. Trust the process. Allow yourself to be carried by the waves, knowing that I am with you, always holding you, guiding you, comforting you. As you grieve the loss of your childhood, you will also begin to grieve other losses. The loss of a sense of safety, the loss of self-esteem, the loss of trust. Each loss must be acknowledged, honored, and released. And with each release, you create space for something new, for healing, for growth, for a deeper connection with me and with your true self. At the heart of your pain, my child, lies the wound of abandonment, the feeling of being left alone, unloved, unworthy. This is the core wound of complex trauma, the source of so much suffering. In your childhood, you may have experienced abandonment in many forms: physical abandonment, emotional neglect, the withdrawal of love and affection. These experiences created a deep sense of insecurity, a fear of being rejected, a belief that you are somehow flawed, unlovable, undeserving. The abandonment wound can manifest in many ways: in depression, anxiety, chronic shame, difficulty forming healthy relationships, a constant need for reassurance, a fear of being alone. It can feel like a bottomless pit, a void that can never be filled. But I am here to tell you, my beloved, that this wound can be healed. You are not alone. You are not unlovable. You are worthy of love, belonging, and connection. Healing the abandonment wound requires facing the pain, acknowledging the depth of your loss, and grieving the absence of the love and care you deserved. It also requires learning to reparent yourself, to provide for yourself the love, nurturing, and validation that you did not receive as a child. Imagine yourself as a small child, frightened, lonely, and hurting. What would you say to that child? What would you do to comfort them, to reassure them, to make them feel safe and loved? Now, my child, turn that compassion inward. Speak to your inner child with kindness, understanding, and unwavering love. Tell yourself that you are worthy, that you are lovable, that you are safe, that you are not alone. This is not a quick fix, my beloved. It is a lifelong journey of self-discovery, self-compassion, and self-love. But with each step you take, you are healing the wound of abandonment, reclaiming your inner child and stepping into the fullness of who I created you to be. The pain of your past, my child, is not only held in your mind and your emotions, it is also stored in your body. Trauma leaves its imprint on your nervous system, creating patterns of tension, hypervigilance, and emotional reactivity. Think of it like this. Imagine a deer in the forest suddenly startled by a loud noise. Its body instantly goes into alert mode, heart racing, muscles tense, senses heightened. Once the danger has passed, the deer will shake its body, releasing the pent-up energy and return to a state of calm. But for you, my child, the danger did not pass. The trauma continued and your body learned to remain in a state of constant alert, constantly bracing for the next blow. This chronic state of tension, of hypervigilance, can manifest in many ways. Chronic pain, digestive problems, sleep disturbances, anxiety, panic attacks, difficulty regulating emotions. To heal, you must learn to release the trauma that is stored in your body. This is where somatic therapies that focus on the body, can be so helpful. There are many different approaches to somatic healing. Movement practices like yoga, dance, or tai chi. Bodywork therapies like massage or acupuncture. And practices that help you to connect with your bodily sensations, like mindful breathing or progressive muscle relaxation. The key is to find practices that feel safe and supportive, that allow you to gently explore the sensations in your body without becoming overwhelmed. As you learn to listen to your body, to understand its language, you will begin to release the pent-up tension, the trapped emotions, the lingering effects of trauma. Imagine a tightly wound spring held in compression for years. Somatic therapies are like gently, gradually releasing that spring, allowing it to unwind, to relax, to return to its natural state. As you heal, my child, you will also need to examine the defenses you developed to protect yourself from the pain of your childhood. These defenses, while once necessary for your survival, may now be hindering your growth, your relationships, your ability to experience joy and connection. Perhaps you learned to shut down your emotions, to become numb to the pain. Perhaps you learned to be hypervigilant, constantly scanning for danger, unable to relax and trust. Perhaps you learned to please others, to sacrifice your own needs to gain approval and avoid rejection. These defenses were once your allies, my child. They helped you to survive in a difficult and dangerous environment. But now, they may be keeping you trapped in patterns of self-sabotage, preventing you from experiencing the fullness of life, the depth of connection, the joy of authentic self-expression. Releasing these defenses is not easy, my beloved. It requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone. It often requires the support of a loving and trustworthy other, a therapist, a friend, a mentor who can help you to see your defenses, to understand their origins, and to find healthier ways of coping. Imagine a suit of armor forged in the fires of your childhood trauma. It protected you from harm, but it also weighed you down, restricted your movement, separated you from the warmth of human connection. Relational healing is the process of gradually removing that armor, piece by piece, learning to trust, to be vulnerable, to allow yourself to be seen and loved for who you truly are. This is where the power of relationship comes in, my child. For it is in the context of safe, supportive relationships that you can learn to trust, to be vulnerable, to express your needs, to receive love and acceptance. It is in relationship that you can heal the wounds of relationship. As you begin this journey I have set before you, understand there will be layers of denial. Denial has kept you safe, my child. As a child, you were powerless, vulnerable, dependent, so your mind created a shield of denial, pushing away, minimizing the truth of abuse and neglect. It was a survival mechanism. Understand that denial is like an onion with many layers. As you peel back each layer, more truth is revealed. and more healing is released. It starts with understanding that physical abuse isn't the only form of abuse. Words, my child, hold incredible power. They can build up and they can tear down. Words of scorn, ridicule, criticism, constant negativity. These wound the spirit, destroy self-esteem. Emotional neglect, my child. It is like starving a plant of sunlight and water. It withers, becomes stunted, unable to blossom. Many children tell themselves it wasn't that bad. Others had it worse. Minimizing, my child, protects you from the full pain, but it also traps you. To heal, you must deminimize, as some call it. You must face the truth. Not all at once, but gently, gradually, as you are ready. It's like peeling an onion, my child. The outer layers might be the most obvious abuse, but as you go deeper, you'll find the more subtle, yet equally damaging wounds. The emotional neglect, the constant criticism, the feeling of never being good enough, the lack of emotional support, the feeling of being invisible. These wounds are real, my child. They matter. They shaped you. It might be helpful to view your father's more overt physical abuse as something obvious to your child mind. It has helped to mask the more covert, subtle, but just as damaging emotional neglect. The emotional wounds are the deepest, my child, and they will take the longest to heal. But know that healing is possible. Those harsh words you heard, the constant criticism, the scorn, they didn't just disappear, my child. They became imprinted in your very being, in the neural pathways of your brain. Imagine a path through a forest. The more a path is walked upon, the more worn and established it becomes. Similarly, the more you heard those negative messages, the stronger those neural pathways became. It's as if those messages became programmed into your mind, creating a default setting of self-criticism and self-doubt. This inner critic, as it's often called, isn't your true voice, my child. It's an echo of the past, a distorted recording that plays over and over again. It tells you you're not good enough, that you're unworthy, that you're a failure. But these are lies, my child. Cruel, damaging lies. The critic thrives on perfectionism, on all or nothing thinking. It sets impossibly high standards and then berates you when you inevitably fall short. It magnifies your flaws, ignores your strengths, and keeps you trapped in a cycle of self-condemnation. But just as a path in the forest can become overgrown with disuse, so too can these negative neural pathways be weakened. You can create new pathways of self-compassion, self-acceptance, and self-love. It takes time, my child, and consistent effort. But with each act of self-kindness, with each challenge to the critic's lies, with each affirmation of your worth, you are weakening the old pathways and strengthening the new. Understand, my child, that you are not to blame for the critic's presence. It was formed in response to trauma, as a misguided attempt to protect you. But now, you have the power to transform it. You can learn to recognize the critic's voice, to challenge its lies, and to replace them with truth. And now, my child, I want you to understand that your life is of infinite value. You are deeply loved. You are a treasure. It breaks my heart to know that an internalized critical voice seeks to take over your life. I have given you life, and I want you to live it abundantly. My child, you must work to fight against the critic. It is not an easy task, but I am with you in this fight. You will not be perfect in this. There will be stumbles and failures. You may even beat yourself up for failing. But this is also the critic, my child. Recognize the all or nothing thinking. The critic will never be satisfied. It will use anything to tell you that you are not enough, even your efforts to be free of it. This is a lifelong battle, my child, but you can win small victories every day. And those victories will accumulate, gradually weakening the critic's power and strengthening your own sense of self. Remember, my child, you are not alone in this struggle. I am with you always. I will give you the strength you need, the wisdom you seek, and the courage to persevere. Trust in me and trust in the process of healing. You are worth it, my child. You are worthy of love, of joy, of peace, of a life lived free from the tyranny of the inner critic. The importance of feeling, my beloved child, feel. Truly feel. Do not push away the pain or minimize it or pretend it does not exist. My precious child, let us speak of the deepest wounds, the ones that often hide in the shadows, unseen yet profoundly felt. The wounds of the heart, the scars of emotional neglect. Imagine a garden, my child, where beautiful flowers are meant to bloom. But what if the gardener withholds the water, the sunlight, the nurturing care that these flowers need to thrive? They will not die outright, perhaps, but they will wither, their colors will fade, their growth will be stunted. This, my child, is the essence of emotional neglect. It is the withholding of the essential nourishment that your soul needed to grow, to blossom, to reach its full potential. It is the absence of the love, the attention, the validation, the emotional support that every child deserves. You may have experienced this in your own life, my child. Perhaps your parents were physically present, providing food and shelter, but emotionally distant, unavailable, or dismissive of your feelings. Perhaps they were too preoccupied with their own struggles, their own pain, to truly see you, to hear you, to understand the needs of your young heart. This absence of emotional connection, my child, is a deep wound. It leaves a void, an emptiness, a longing that can ache for a lifetime. It can make you feel invisible, unworthy, unlovable, as if you are somehow fundamentally flawed. But I am here to tell you, my beloved, that this is not the truth. You are not flawed. You are not unworthy. You are precious in my sight, loved beyond measure, and deserving of all the good things that life has to offer. The pain you feel, the anxiety, the depression, the persistent sense of unease, these are not signs of weakness, but the echoes of that early abandonment, the lingering effects of being emotionally starved. Many, my child, minimize the impact of emotional neglect. They compare their suffering to those who have endured more overt forms of abuse, physical violence, sexual trauma, and they tell themselves, "It wasn't that bad. Others had it worse." But I tell you, my child, pain is not a competition. Your suffering is valid. Your wounds are real, regardless of how they compare to the experiences of others. Emotional neglect can be just as damaging, sometimes even more so than physical abuse. It is a silent wound, often invisible to the outside world, but it can leave deep scars on the heart and soul. There are even those, my child, who experienced obvious, undeniable abuse and yet did not develop this deep-rooted pain. Do you know why? Because there was, in many of those situations, someone who did offer them emotional connection. Perhaps it was a grandparent, a sibling, a teacher, or a neighbor. One person, one soul that acknowledged their value. It did not have to be perfect, but the damage was lessened by the presence of love. But for you, my child, perhaps there was no such person. Perhaps you were utterly alone, adrift in a sea of indifference, struggling to survive in a world that felt cold, harsh, and uncaring. This, my child, is profound trauma. Think of a young child lost and alone in a vast wilderness. They cry out for help, but no one comes. They search for shelter, but find only emptiness. They hunger for connection, but are met only with indifference. This, my child, is the experience of emotional neglect. It is a primal wound, a violation of your deepest needs, a betrayal of the trust you placed in those who were meant to care for you. This neglect, my child, can leave you feeling like you are stranded on the outside of a warm, loving home, looking in through the window, desperately thirsty for the connection, the belonging, the love that you see inside but unable to reach it. This deep hunger, my child, this craving for emotional nourishment, can drive you to seek satisfaction in unhealthy ways. You may turn to food, to substances, to work, to relationships, anything that promises to fill the void, to numb the pain, to provide a temporary sense of comfort and connection. These are not signs of weakness, my child, but desperate attempts to self-soothe, to find relief from the unbearable ache of loneliness and abandonment. They are like trying to quench a deep thirst with salt water. It may provide momentary relief, but it ultimately leaves you more dehydrated, more desperate, more empty. It is okay, my child. Understand that your cravings and your searching are born of a real need. But the things of this world will never satisfy. Only my love can do that. The failure to thrive, my beloved, when a child is consistently denied the emotional nourishment they need, their very spirit can begin to wither. This is what some call failure to thrive, a condition where a child's growth, both physical and emotional, is stunted. You may have heard stories of infants in orphanages, deprived of human touch, of loving attention, who simply faded away, losing the will to live. This, my child, is an extreme example of the devastating effects of emotional neglect. But failure to thrive is not an all-or-nothing phenomenon, my beloved. It exists on a spectrum. Many who have experienced profound emotional neglect in childhood may not have literally died, but they may have experienced a kind of inner death, a dimming of the spirit, a loss of hope, a profound sense of emptiness and despair. You may have felt this, my child, as a sense of being disconnected from yourself, from others, from life itself. A feeling of being lost, adrift without purpose or meaning. A sense of being fundamentally broken, unworthy of love, incapable of joy. You may have, even in moments of deepest despair, felt a pull towards death, a longing to escape the pain, to find release from the unbearable burden of your existence. This, my child, is not a sign of weakness, but a testament to the depth of your suffering, the intensity of your longing for relief. Know this, my child, that in those moments of darkness, I am with you. Even when you feel utterly alone, you are not. I am holding you, cradling you, weeping with you, longing to bring you comfort and healing. I created you, my child, for connection, for love, for belonging. Your very biology is wired for it. From the moment you were born, you needed the touch, the gaze, the voice of your caregivers to thrive. Think of a newborn baby, my child. They cannot feed themselves, clothe themselves, protect themselves. They are utterly dependent on their caregivers for survival, and their survival depends not only on physical care, but also on emotional connection. In the early days of your life, my child, your very survival depended on the bond you had with those around you. In the ancient times, when humanity lived in close-knit tribes, a child separated from their caregivers would be in mortal danger. Predators, hunger, the elements all posed a constant threat. So, your brain, my child, developed a powerful alarm system, a fear response that is triggered by separation, by abandonment. This fear is not merely a psychological phenomenon. It is deeply rooted in your biology, in your survival instinct. When you cried out as a baby, my child, it was not simply a request for food or a clean diaper. It was a cry for connection, a plea for reassurance, a desperate attempt to ensure your survival. And when that cry went unanswered, when your needs for emotional connection were consistently unmet, it triggered a cascade of stress hormones, wiring your brain for fear, anxiety, and a deep sense of insecurity. This is not your fault, my child. You are not meant to endure such profound neglect. You are not meant to grow up feeling unsafe, unloved, and alone. But this early experience, my child, shaped your understanding of the world, of relationships, of yourself. It created a pattern of relating that is based on fear, distrust, and a deep-seated belief that you are not worthy of love and connection. In an environment of emotional neglect, my child, you learned that your needs were not important, that your feelings were not valid, that your voice did not matter. You learned to suppress your emotions, to hide your vulnerability, to build a wall around your heart to protect yourself from further pain. This wall, my child, may have served you well in childhood. It may have helped you to survive in a difficult and painful environment. But now, it is keeping you trapped, preventing you from experiencing the fullness of life, the joy of connection, the healing power of love. You may have learned to be fiercely independent, to rely on no one but yourself. You may have learned to be a perfectionist, striving to achieve impossible standards in an attempt to earn the love and approval you craved. You may have learned to be a people pleaser, sacrificing your own needs and desires to avoid conflict and rejection. These are all survival strategies, my child, adaptations to a painful reality. But they are not who you truly are. They are masks, defenses, coping mechanisms that are no longer serving you. Beneath the wall, beneath the defenses, beneath the masks, lies your true self, my child. A self that is vulnerable, sensitive, loving, and worthy of love. A self that longs to connect, to belong, to be seen, to be heard, to be cherished. The child, in their desperation for connection, will often blame themselves for the lack of love. If only I were better, prettier, smarter, quieter, more obedient, then they would love me. This, my child, is the seed of the inner critic, the voice that constantly whispers of your inadequacy, your unworthiness. And so the child begins to abandon themselves. They abandon their own needs, their own feelings, their own desires in a desperate attempt to earn the love they so desperately crave. They become hyper-vigilant to the needs and moods of their parents, trying to anticipate and fulfill their every wish, hoping to finally receive the validation they long for. But this, my child, is a losing battle. For the love that is earned through self-abandonment is not true love. It is a conditional, fleeting, unreliable form of approval that leaves the child constantly striving, constantly insecure, constantly afraid of losing the fragile connection they have managed to create. The world as a dangerous place, and because the child's primary caregivers, the ones who were meant to be their safe haven, were instead a source of pain and neglect, the child begins to see the world as a dangerous place. The child's inner critic, fueled by the constant messages of unworthiness, begins to project this danger onto everyone else. Strangers, teachers, other children all become potential threats, potential sources of rejection, criticism, and abandonment. This, my child, is the root of social anxiety, the fear of being judged, rejected, or humiliated by others. It is a fear that is born out of the early experience of emotional neglect, the feeling of being unsafe, unseen, and unloved in the very place where you should have felt the most secure. And so, the child retreats, withdraws, isolates themselves, further reinforcing the belief that they are alone, that they are unlovable, that they are unworthy of connection. This is the tragic legacy of emotional neglect, my child. It robs you of your birthright, your inherent capacity for joy, for connection, for a life lived in the fullness of your being. But I am here, my child. I am here to tell you that healing is possible, that you can reclaim your birthright, that you can learn to trust, to love, to connect, to live a life filled with joy, meaning, and purpose. My beloved child, because you were not met with empathy, understanding, and validation in your childhood, your capacity to understand and manage your own emotions and the emotions of others may have been stunted. This is what some call emotional intelligence, the ability to navigate the complex world of human feelings with wisdom, compassion, and skill. Imagine a child learning to play a musical instrument. If they are never given lessons, never shown how to hold the instrument, how to read the music, how to produce a beautiful sound, they will struggle to create music. Similarly, if a child is never shown how to understand and express their emotions in a healthy way, they will struggle to navigate the emotional landscape of their own lives and the lives of others. In a home where emotions are ignored, dismissed, or punished, the child learns that feelings are dangerous, shameful, or irrelevant. They learn to suppress their emotions, to deny their needs, to disconnect from their inner world. And because they have never seen healthy emotional expression modeled for them, they may struggle to understand and respond to the emotions of others. They may misinterpret social cues, struggle to form healthy relationships, and feel overwhelmed by the intensity of their own feelings. This lack of emotional intelligence, my child, can lead to many difficulties in life. It can make it hard to form and maintain healthy relationships, to communicate effectively, to resolve conflicts, to cope with stress, and to experience the full range of human emotions in a balanced and healthy way. The path to healing, the journey of healing, my precious child, is not a straight line. It is a winding path with ups and downs, twists and turns. There will be moments of clarity and moments of confusion, moments of joy and moments of deep sorrow. But I am with you, my child, every step of the way. I am your guide, your comforter, your source of strength and wisdom. I will never leave you nor forsake you. The first step on this journey, my child, is awareness. It is recognizing the wounds of your past, understanding the impact of emotional neglect on your life, and acknowledging the pain you have carried for so long. This is not about blaming your parents, my child. It is about understanding the circumstances that shaped you, the experiences that wounded you, and the patterns of behavior that are no longer serving you. The next step, my child, is grief. It is allowing yourself to feel the full range of your emotions without judgment, without shame, without trying to push them away. It is mourning the loss of the childhood you deserved, the loss of the love and care you needed, the loss of the innocence that was stolen from you. Grief is a sacred process, my child. It is the way your soul cleanses itself, releases the pain, and makes space for healing and growth. Do not rush it, do not avoid it, do not minimize it. Allow yourself to feel, to cry, to rage, to mourn. As you grieve, my child, you will also begin to reparent yourself. You will learn to provide for yourself the love, the validation, the nurturing that you did not receive as a child. You will learn to speak to yourself with kindness, compassion, and understanding. You will learn to set healthy boundaries, to protect yourself from harm, and to nurture your own growth and well-being. This is a process of self-discovery, my child. It is a journey of learning to love yourself, to accept yourself, to embrace your true self, the self that I created you to be. And as you heal, my child, you will begin to connect with others in a new way. You will learn to trust, to be vulnerable, to form healthy, loving relationships. You will discover the joy of true connection, the comfort of belonging, the power of shared experience. This is your birthright, my child. This is the life I have always intended for you. A life of love, of joy, of peace, of purpose, of connection. Do not be afraid, my child. I am with you. I am guiding you. I am healing you. I am loving you always and forever. Step forward, my beloved, into the light of your true self, into the fullness of your being, into the glorious destiny that awaits you. The journey may be long, but the destination is worth it. I promise you, trust in me and let us walk this path together. My precious child, let us delve deeper into the heart of the matter, into the core wound that often lies hidden beneath layers of pain and confusion, the wound of emotional abandonment. Imagine a child, my child, small and vulnerable, reaching out for love, for comfort, for connection, only to be met with indifference, with coldness, with a void where warmth and understanding should be. This, my beloved, is the essence of emotional abandonment. It is the feeling of being left alone, unseen, unheard, unloved, in a world that feels vast and terrifying. Many who have endured this, my child, struggle to recognize the depth of the wound. They may say, but I was never physically abused. My parents provided for my basic needs. I had food, shelter, clothing. They minimize the pain, comparing themselves to others who may have suffered more visible forms of trauma. But I tell you, my child, emotional abandonment is a profound form of abuse. It is a starving of the soul, a denial of the very essence of what it means to be human. To be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to be cherished, these are not luxuries, my beloved. They are necessities as vital to your well-being as food and water. Think of it like this, my child. A plant may have soil, water, and sunlight, but if it is placed in a dark corner, away from the warmth of the sun, it will not thrive. It may survive, but it will not blossom. Similarly, a child may have their physical needs met, but if they are deprived of emotional warmth, of connection, of love, their spirit will wither. Many struggle, my child, to remember those early years. Much of this wounding may have taken place when you were too small to form clear memories. The pain exists not as a story you can tell, but as a feeling, a deep-seated sense of unease, of unworthiness, of being fundamentally alone. It's like a puzzle, my child, with many scattered pieces. You may not have a complete picture of your childhood, but you have fragments, glimpses, feelings that arise seemingly out of nowhere. These are the clues, the whispers of your inner child trying to tell you the story of your pain. The healing, my child, begins when you acknowledge. When that feeling of panic arises, that feeling of being unsafe, of being disconnected, you have a breakthrough. You realize this is the echo of long ago. It's the child within, still feeling the sting of being alone. And my beloved, this understanding can bring a profound sense of relief. It is the realization that your struggles, the fragile self-esteem, the recurring emotional flashbacks, the difficulty forming lasting, supportive relationships are not signs of weakness or inherent flaws, but the natural consequences of having been emotionally abandoned. Your parents, my child, may have been physically present, but their hearts were closed. They may have been unable to give you the love and attention you needed, perhaps because of their own wounds, their own struggles, their own unhealed pain. This is not to excuse their behavior, my child, but to understand it. And understanding is the key to releasing the blame, the shame, the self-condemnation that you may have carried for so long. It can be, my child, that your parents themselves were raised in this manner. They may have never known what emotional availability was, so they were unable to give to you what they never themselves received. My child, I know it is not easy to talk about. To even admit to the pain may feel like a betrayal of those you depended on. But it is in talking about it, in sharing the experience, that true healing takes place. It is in that act of vulnerability that others can meet you, hold you, and affirm your inherent worth. And this process, my child, is a lifelong journey. There will be times when the pain of that early abandonment resurfaces, when you feel that deep sense of loneliness, of unworthiness, of being utterly alone. But with each layer of understanding, with each act of self-compassion, with each moment of connection with others, the wound begins to heal. The scars may remain, my child, but they will no longer define you. They will become a testament to your resilience, your strength, your capacity to endure and to overcome. There may be times, my child, when the longing for that connection is so intense that it feels almost unbearable. You will remember the pain of being shut out, of being denied the comfort and reassurance you so desperately needed. But in those moments, my child, remember that I am with you. I am the loving parent who will never abandon you, who will never turn away from your pain, who will always hold you in the embrace of my unconditional love. And as you heal, my child, you will also learn to connect with others in a new way. You will learn to recognize and choose relationships that are based on mutual respect, trust, and genuine affection. You will learn to set healthy boundaries, to protect yourself from further harm, and to create a community of support that nourishes your soul. The power of story, my beloved. As you heal, you will also find your voice. You will begin to tell your story not as a victim, but as a survivor, as a warrior, as a child of God who has overcome immense challenges and emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Your story, my child, is a powerful tool. It is a testament to your resilience, your strength, your capacity to heal. It is a source of hope and inspiration for others who may be struggling with similar wounds. As you tell your story, my child, you will find that it changes. It will become more complete, more nuanced, more filled with compassion, both for yourself and for those who hurt you. You will begin to see the patterns, the connections, the ways in which your early experiences shaped your beliefs, your behaviors, your relationships. You will begin to understand the root causes of your pain, and you will begin to release the shame, the guilt, the self-blame that you have carried for so long. And as you tell your story, my child, you will also begin to reclaim your power. You will no longer be defined by your past, but empowered by it. You will become the author of your own life, the creator of your own destiny. One of my children, my beloved, found themselves in the throes of a deep despair. They were struggling, even to find something as simple as a card to send to their mother for a holiday. My life is terrible, they confided, and I am even worse. I can't even do something as simple as pick out a card. But this child, my beloved, had been on a journey of healing. They had begun to understand the depth of the emotional neglect they had endured, the profound impact it had on their life. And as they stood in that store, surrounded by cards filled with sentiments of love and gratitude, They realized that none of those words resonated with their own experience. They felt a surge of anger, of grief, of righteous indignation. "None of those cards are right for me," they said. "My mother never said anything kind to me, never did anything kind for me." And in that moment, my child, they allowed themselves to feel the full force of their pain, the full extent of their loss. They wept, they raged, they mourned the absence of the love and care they had deserved. And as the tears flowed, my child, something shifted. The pain began to subside, replaced by a sense of strength, of self-compassion, of resilience. "I should start a card business for people like me," they said, a glimmer of humor returning to their eyes. "Cards for people with dysfunctional parents. Thanks for never knowing what grade I was in," or "Thanks for always walking away when I was hurt," or "Thanks for teaching me how to only notice my own problems," or "Thanks for teaching me how to hate myself." This, my child, is the power of healing. It is the ability to find humor in the midst of pain, to find strength in the midst of vulnerability, to find hope in the midst of despair. It is the understanding that your pain, your story, your experience can be a source of connection, of healing, not only for yourself, but for others as well. Understanding your parents' failures, my beloved, it is essential on this journey of healing to understand the profound failures of your parents, to recognize the depth of their neglect, to acknowledge the ways in which they failed to meet your most basic needs. This is not about assigning blame, my child. It is about understanding the truth, about seeing your childhood with clarity, about acknowledging the impact of their actions on your life. Emotional neglect, my beloved, is a profound form of abuse. It is the withholding of love, of attention, of validation, of emotional support. It is the absence of the very things that a child needs to thrive, to develop a healthy sense of self, to feel safe, secure, and loved. When a child is consistently emotionally neglected, they learn that their needs are not important, that their feelings are not valid, that their voice does not matter. They learn to suppress their emotions, to hide their vulnerability, to disconnect from their inner world. And as they grow, my child, they carry this wound with them. It shapes their beliefs, their behaviors, their relationships. It can lead to anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, difficulty forming healthy attachments, and a deep-seated sense of unworthiness. Understanding the depth of your parents' failures, my child, is not about dwelling on the past. It is about freeing yourself from the past. It is about recognizing that the pain you carry is not your fault, that you were not responsible for the neglect you experienced, that you deserved better. This understanding, my beloved, can be incredibly empowering. It can allow you to release the shame, the guilt, the self-blame that you have carried for so long. It can allow you to begin to heal, to reclaim your power, to create a life that is filled with love, joy, and connection. When you are in the throes of emotional pain, my child, and you recognize that the feeling is familiar, that it is the echo of your childhood, a profound shift can happen. You can separate yourself from the young child who felt the pain, and you can bring your adult, loving self to bear. You can comfort that child. You can nurture them. You can tell them that they are loved. This, my child, is the essence of healing. And as you continue to heal, my child, you will be able to look back on your childhood with compassion, not only for yourself, but also for your parents. You will begin to understand that they too were wounded, that they too were carrying their own pain, their own unhealed trauma. This does not excuse their behavior, my child, but it does provide context. It allows you to see them not as monsters, but as flawed human beings, struggling to do the best they could with the limited resources they had. And this understanding, my beloved, can be the key to forgiveness. Not a forgiveness that condones their actions, but a forgiveness that releases you from the burden of anger, resentment, and bitterness. A forgiveness that allows you to move forward in your life, free from the chains of the past. The journey continues, my precious child. The journey of healing is a lifelong process. There will be times when you feel strong and empowered, and times when you feel vulnerable and overwhelmed. There will be moments of clarity and moments of confusion, moments of joy and moments of deep sorrow. But I am with you, my child, always. I am your constant companion, your unwavering source of strength, your ever-present guide. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Continue to seek understanding, my child. Continue to grieve the losses of your childhood. Continue to reparent yourself, providing the love, the validation, the nurturing that you did not receive. Continue to connect with others, to build healthy, supportive relationships, to create a community of love and belonging. And continue to tell your story, my child. Share your experiences, your insights, your wisdom with others. Your voice is powerful, your story is important, and your journey can inspire and heal countless others. Remember, my beloved, you are not alone. You are loved, you are cherished, you are worthy of all the good things that life has to offer. Step forward with courage, with faith, with hope, into the fullness of your being, into the glorious destiny that awaits you. I am with you always. Trust in me and let us walk this path together.